The front entrance is for actual guests, Celeste whispered, pushing the pie dish back toward me. Behind her, strangers were drinking champagne beneath the chandelier I had chosen with my husband. The blue glass fanlight above the front door had been my choice. Philip had wanted plain clear panes because they were cheaper, but in the spring of 1986, when we stood inside a dusty little salvage warehouse outside Richmond, I held that fanlight up toward the sun and watched the blue glass scatter patches of colour over his shirt. Philip looked down at the light moving across his chest, then at me, and smiled the smile that always meant he had already surrendered. "Fine," he said. "But when people ask why our front hall looks like a church, I'm blaming you." For 38 years, afternoon sunlight passed through that glass and painted the same blue shapes across the floorboards. I watched Julian crawl through them as a baby, race toy cars through them as a boy, and stand nervously inside them in a rented tuxedo on the night of his first school dance. I stood beneath that fanlight when Philip's casket left the house. I stood beneath it again when I signed the deed over to our son because he said the house was the only thing that could save his business. And on the Saturday before Labor Day, I stood outside it holding a warm ceramic dish of bourbon-peach cobbler while my daughter-in-law told me the front entrance was not for me. I was 70 years old. I had driven 86 minutes from my apartment in Fredericksburg because Julian had called 3 nights earlier. "Mom, please come," he had said. "Celeste is hosting a dinner for the foundation board. She wants the family there. She specifically asked about your cobbler." The foundation board was new. Celeste had recently become co-chair of something called the Richmond Heritage Children's Trust, an organization that held expensive dinners to raise money for children whose names none of the donors seemed to know. The invitation Julian texted me had cream lettering, a watercolor drawing of the house, and the words, "An evening at Hawthorne House" across the top. Hawthorne House, that was what Celeste called it online. Philip and I had always called it home. By the time I returned, carrying the cobbler in both hands and the hydrangeas tucked beneath one arm, the front steps were glowing with lanterns. Music drifted through the open windows. I could see men in jackets and women in silk dresses moving through rooms where I had once folded laundry, wrapped Christmas presents, and sat awake waiting for Julian to come home after curfew. I rang the bell. Celeste opened the door almost immediately. She wore an ivory satin dress and diamond earrings that had belonged to her grandmother. Her lipstick was the same deep red she used whenever she expected photographs. For 1 second, surprise crossed her face. Then came the smile. Not warmth. Not welcome. The little careful smile people wear when they have discovered an inconvenience but do not want anyone nearby to notice. "Marjorie," she said, "you're early." I looked at my watch. "It's 6:28. Julian said 6:30. "Yes, but guests are still arriving." Her eyes moved to the flowers, then the cobbler, then my shoes. "Did you park around front?" "On Franklin. The street is full." She leaned closer and lowered her voice. "Would you mind using the catering entrance tonight?" I thought I had misheard her. "The what?" "The kitchen entrance, through the side garden." The front hall behind her was full of people. A waiter passed carrying champagne. At the far end of the room, beneath the chandelier Philip and I had bought at an estate sale, Julian stood beside the fireplace speaking to a man with silver hair. Julian looked toward the door. Our eyes met. He saw me. I know he saw me because his sentence stopped halfway. The silver-haired man turned to follow his gaze. Julian immediately looked down at the drink in his hand. Celeste shifted closer, blocking more of the doorway. "We just had the antique runner cleaned," she said. "And the front entrance is for actual guests, board members, sponsors, that sort of thing. Family can come in through the kitchen. It keeps the flow organized. There are sentences that hurt because they are cruel. There are other sentences that hurt because they reveal how long the cruelty has been present." "The front entrance is for actual guests," I repeated. She gave a tiny sigh, the kind she used when explaining something to a child. "Please don't make this uncomfortable." I looked past her once more. Julian had turned his back. That was the moment. Not the words, not the cleaned rug. Not even the fact that strangers were drinking beneath my chandelier while I stood outside holding dessert. It was my son turning away. But a person cannot be trapped in a moment when all he has to do is cross a room. Julian chose not to cross it. I placed the hydrangeas on top of the cobbler dish and held both towards Celeste. "Please give these to my son." Her face changed. "Marjorie, don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic." My voice was so calm that it frightened even me. "I'm delivering dessert." "You drove all this way?" "Yes." "Then go around the side." "No." Celeste glanced behind her. 2 women near the staircase were watching now. "Can we not do this here?" she whispered. "We are not doing anything." I placed the dish in her hands. "Tell Julian his mother came to the front door." Then I turned and walked down the steps. I heard her say my name once. I did not look back. The blue light from the fanlight fell across the porch behind me, but none of it reached the sidewalk. I sat in my car without starting the engine. Through the windshield, I watched another couple climb the steps. Celeste opened the door wide for them. The man kissed her cheek. The woman handed her a bottle of wine. They disappeared into the house without being asked to wipe their shoes. My hands remained steady on the steering wheel. That surprised me. I had always imagined that the moment a family finally broke your heart, there would be noise, a cry, a slammed door, some great visible collapse. Instead, there was only a quiet rearrangement inside me, like a room being emptied. Across the street, a dog barked behind a fence. Somewhere inside the house, people applauded. I wondered if Julian had begun his welcome speech. I wondered whether the cobbler was already in the kitchen. I wondered if anyone would ask who made it. Then I stopped wondering. I opened my phone and called Naomi Ross. Naomi had been Philip's lawyer for 22 years. After he died, she became mine. She was 63, sharp-eyed, silver-haired, and incapable of pretending that a bad decision was anything else. She answered on the 4th ring. "Marjorie, is everything all right?" "No," I said, "but I think it is about to be." There was a pause. "Where are you?" "Outside the house on Hawthorne Avenue." Another pause, shorter this time. "What happened?" I told her. I described the invitation, the valet, the hydrangeas, Celeste's dress, the words "actual guests," and Julian turning away. I described it in order. Naomi never interrupted. She had once told me that when a person finally decides to protect herself, the first gift you give her is the dignity of finishing the sentence. When I was done, she said, "Do you still have the 2019 refinance file?" "Yes." "The indemnity agreement too?" "I think so." "And the letter Julian signed promising to remove you as guarantor?" "In the blue cabinet." "Good. Come to my office Tuesday at 8:30. "Tuesday?" "Monday is a federal holiday. Banks are closed, but Consequences will still be open Tuesday morning." I let out a breath that might have become a laugh in another life. "Naomi, can I really do anything? The deed is in Julian's name." "The deed is in his name," she said. "But your money, your credit, and your recorded security interest are still wrapped around that house like steel wire. He was supposed to refinance you out by December of 2020. He did not. He also opened a home equity line 2 years later without getting the release your agreement requires." "How much am I still exposed for?" I asked. $743,000, plus whatever is currently drawn on the line." The number seemed to fill the car. "And if they stop paying?" "The bank can come after you. Your retirement account is protected in part, but your savings, your credit, and the estate Philip left could be dragged into years of litigation." I looked at the house. Lantern light warmed every window. To anyone passing, it looked secure, elegant, permanent. It looked like a family success story. But my name was still beneath it, holding it up. "What can I do?" Naomi's voice changed. It became the voice she used when facts had finished introducing themselves. "You can demand immediate refinance. You can accelerate the secured obligation under the agreement. If they cannot satisfy it, you can seek a court-supervised sale. And because Julian opened additional credit in violation of the recorded terms, you have stronger grounds than you did 2 years ago. How long? If he cooperates, weeks. If he fights, months. If his lender panics, faster. I watched a waiter close the curtains in the front room. Start Tuesday, I said. Marjorie, I need you to understand what that may mean. They may lose the house. Yes? The house they told me not to enter. Yes. I placed both hands flat against the steering wheel. Then start Tuesday. I drove back to Fredericksburg in darkness. I reached my apartment shortly before 10. It was quiet, modest, and mine. I had moved there after Philip's death because the house felt too large, and Julian said he needed to live closer to the city for work. He had promised I could keep my room upstairs for visits. Within 6 months, Celeste turned it into a dressing room. She sent me photographs of the renovation with heart emojis. I made tea and opened the blue cabinet. The first file held the 2012 transfer. Julian's architecture and development company had been 6 weeks from collapse. A hotel project stalled. 2 investors pulled out. He came to us on a rainy February evening with his face grey from lack of sleep. I just need collateral, he said. Once the new financing closes, I'll put everything back. Philip did not want to transfer the house. I did. Julian was our only child. He had worked hard. He had a new baby. He cried at our kitchen table and said he was ashamed. I took his hand. No son of mine will lose everything while I have a roof, I told him. Philip looked at me for a long time. Then he agreed, but only if Naomi drew up protections. A recorded security interest reflecting our equity, a written obligation to keep the property insured and taxes current, and a promise that any future refinance would remove us from liability. The second file held the 2019 refinance. By then, Philip had been dead almost a year. Julian said the old loan's interest rate was crushing him. Celeste was expanding her events company. Sophie was too. They needed breathing room. I signed as guarantor because Julian's income varied and the bank wanted another strong borrower. At Naomi's insistence, Julian signed a separate indemnity and release agreement. It required him to refinance me off the debt within 18 months. It prohibited additional borrowing against the house without written consent. It gave me the right to demand repayment of the secured family interest if he failed. At the bottom, in Julian's neat handwriting, were the words, I understand that my mother's financial security is tied to this property only temporarily. I will remove her from all liability no later than December 15th, 2020. Signed, Julian Philip Vale. I read the sentence 4 times, temporarily. At 11:30, my phone lit up with a message from Julian. Mum, where did you go? Celeste said you got offended about the side entrance. Please don't turn this into something bigger. Call me tomorrow. Not, I saw you. Not, I am sorry. Not, I should have come to the door. Please don't turn this into something bigger. As though the size of the wound depended on whether I mentioned it. I did not answer. Instead, I took out a yellow legal pad and wrote a heading, What I am no longer willing to carry. Under it I wrote, 1. A mortgage on a house where I am not welcome. 2. A son's silence presented as peacekeeping. 3. A daughter-in-law's contempt presented as etiquette. 4. The belief that love requires me to accept all 3. I placed the list inside the file. Then I slept for 6 uninterrupted hours, better than I had slept in months. Sunday became a chain of unanswered calls. Celeste left a message saying I had overreacted, that the event had raised $90,000, and that a mature woman would not punish a family over an entrance. An hour later, she posted a photograph of herself and Julian beneath the blue fanlight. My cobbler sat behind them in Philip's serving dish. The caption said that a home mattered only when its doors were open to people who needed hope. I took a screenshot, placed the phone face down, and understood that neither of them was waiting to apologize. They were waiting for me to become embarrassed enough to return quietly. Naomi's office occupied the 2nd floor of a brick building near the courthouse. Tuesday morning, she was waiting with coffee, 3 sharpened pencils, and a stack of documents marked with red tabs. She wore a charcoal suit. I wore pearls. Naomi noticed and nodded approvingly. Philip would be pleased. Philip would have changed the locks himself. He also would have called Julian 6 names before breakfast. Only 6? That was the first time I laughed. It lasted 2 seconds. It helped. Naomi began with the facts. The house was worth between $1 million and $1,150,000, depending on condition and buyer demand. The primary mortgage balance was approximately $689,000. The equity line carried $54,000. My recorded family security interest, including the original equity contribution and contractual adjustments, stood at $182,000. Julian's company had guaranteed part of the equity line. If the house was sold near market value, the debts could be paid, my secured interest satisfied, and Julian might receive a small remainder. If he fought and legal fees grew, everyone would receive less. "What about the furniture?" I asked. "Most of it belongs to him unless you can prove otherwise." "The chandelier was mine. Do you want it?" I pictured it above another family's table. "No," I said. "Let it stay with the house." Naomi slid the first letter toward me. It was a formal notice of default. Julian had 30 days to remove me from every obligation, repay the secured family interest, and cure the unauthorized borrowing. If he failed, I would seek foreclosure of my security interest and a court order permitting sale. The second letter went to the mortgage lender, advising them that the guarantor dispute had become active and requesting a complete accounting. The third went to the bank holding the equity line. The fourth was addressed to Julian personally. It was only 1 page. "Julian, you promised in writing to remove me from all liability connected to Hawthorne Avenue by December 15, 2020. You did not. You later borrowed additional money against the property without the consent required by our agreement. I have carried the financial risk of your home for years while being treated as though I require permission to enter it. You now have 30 days to refinance, repay, or cooperate with a sale. This decision is final. Marjorie Vale." I read it twice. "Is the last sentence too harsh?" Naomi asked. "No." "Would you like to add anything about Saturday?" "No. Saturday is why I am acting. It is not what gives me the right." Naomi smiled faintly. "That distinction will save you a great deal of trouble." We signed everything before 11. At 11:20, Naomi called a real estate broker named Harriet Wynne. Harriet had sold more historic homes in Richmond than anyone I knew. She had also attended Philip's funeral and once brought me soup when I had pneumonia. Naomi explained the situation in broad terms. Then she handed me the phone. "Marjorie," Harriet said, "are you certain?" "I am." "Julian knows?" "He will when the courier arrives." A small pause. "All right, I can prepare a private valuation by Friday. No sign, no public listing until council clears it, but I need access. Naomi will arrange it. You may have buyers quickly. That street has almost no inventory." "Then find someone who will use the front door." Harriet did not laugh. She said, "I understand." The courier delivered Julian's letter at 2:07 that afternoon. My phone rang at 2:19. Julian came Wednesday night. He arrived alone at 9:10, after calling 17 times. I knew he was in the hallway because he knocked the same way he had as a teenager. 3 quick taps, a pause, then 2 more. For several minutes I stood inside without moving. Then I opened the door but kept the chain fastened. He looked older than 48. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were red. A smear of rain darkened one shoulder. "Mum." "Julian. Please let me in." "No." Julian stared at the chain as though it were a personal betrayal. He told me the bank had frozen the equity line, vendors were calling Celeste, and his business partner feared a credit review. I asked whether he was solvent. He said they would be, if I gave them more time. I reminded him that I had already given him the house, guaranteed the refinance, ignored the missed deadline, and stayed silent about the later borrowing. When I asked how many more years would finally be enough, He had no answer. I told him we had never worked things out. I had absorbed the damage, and he had mistaken that for peace. He began to cry, not theatrically, quietly. His shoulders shook once. He wiped his cheek with the heel of his hand and looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry I didn't come to the door," he said. The hallway seemed to go still. "You saw me." He nodded. "I saw you through the mirror over the fireplace." "And you heard her?" Another nod. "What did you hear?" He swallowed. "I heard her say the front entrance was for actual guests." There it was. The truth had finally entered the hallway. "And what did you do?" I froze. "No, you turned away." I didn't know what to do. "You could have walked 10 feet. I know. You could have said, 'That is my mother.' I know. You could have opened the door yourself. I know." He was crying harder now. "Why didn't you?" I asked. He looked at me with the exhausted honesty of a man who had run out of respectable lies. "Because Celeste had spent weeks planning the evening, because the donors were watching, because I knew if I contradicted her, we would fight for days, and because I thought you would forgive me." That answer hurt more than Celeste's words. Not because it was cruel, because it was accurate. He had chosen the person whose anger had consequences over the person whose pain did not. "You were right," I said. "I would have forgiven you." Hope flickered across his face. "I have forgiven you many times." That is how we arrived here. The hope disappeared. "Mum, please, we can sell in a year. We can downsize carefully. Sophie can finish the school term. Celeste can wind down the events. Just withdraw the letters." "No. What do you want from me?" "I want my name off your debt. I want my security repaid. I want you to stop building your life on the assumption that I will absorb whatever you refuse to face. You're taking Sophie's home. You took my house and turned me into a visitor who did not qualify as a guest. That isn't fair. Fair would have been honoring the agreement 4 years ago." He gripped the railing beside my door. "Celeste says you've been resentful for years." "Celeste is correct." The answer startled him. "I have been resentful. I was also ashamed of being resentful, so I kept converting it into helpfulness. I cooked. I babysat. I arrived early. I left quietly. I lent money. I pretended not to notice where I was seated. I told myself every insult was a misunderstanding, because admitting the truth would require me to change something." I leaned closer to the narrow opening. "Saturday changed something." He whispered. "What?" "I stopped being more afraid of losing you than I was of losing myself." For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then Julian asked, "Will you see Sophie?" "Whenever she is allowed to come without being used as a messenger." He closed his eyes. "Celeste won't agree to that right now." "Then that is Celeste's decision. You're her grandmother." "Yes, and you are her father. Protect her from adult bargaining." He looked at me for another few seconds, then stepped back. "I don't recognize you," he said. I almost smiled. "I am beginning to." I closed the door. On Friday, Harriet arrived at my apartment with a leather folder. She had inspected the house with a court-approved appraiser, while Julian and Celeste's lawyer watched. "The property is beautiful," she said carefully. "But there are issues." "Tell me." "The addition was completed with permits, but the cost was excessive. The kitchen was renovated twice in 5 years. Several original features were removed. The roof needs work. Still, location is strong. My conservative number is 1,040,000. With the right private buyer, perhaps 1,090,000. And the debt? About 778,000 before fees and your secured claim. So Julian may receive almost nothing. He may owe money if litigation drags." I looked at the photographs inside the folder. The front hall was nearly unchanged. Blue light on the floorboards. Philip's old umbrella stand in the corner. The staircase where Julian had sat waiting for the school bus on his first day of kindergarten. The kitchen was all white now. My oak table was gone. The sunroom where Philip read the paper had become the Hawthorne Salon. A brass plaque near the bar said, "Created by Celeste Vale Events." Not a single photograph in the sales package showed evidence that I had ever lived there. Harriet watched my face. "I have a possible buyer," she said. "Not officially, a family from Norfolk. Their house burned in June. The mother is a pediatric surgeon transferring to Richmond. The father teaches history, and they have 3 children. They need to close quickly before school gets too far along. Will they keep the fanlight? They loved it in the photographs. Show them the house. Julian's lawyer may object. Naomi will handle it." Harriet reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "Marjorie, selling a house can feel like another death. This house died for me at the front door." The private showing took place the following Tuesday. Julian and Celeste were required to leave for 2 hours. They did, but not quietly. Celeste posted a message online about elder manipulation and financial abuse disguised as family concern. She did not use my name, but she did not need to. Mutual acquaintances began texting me. "Is everything okay? I heard there is a dispute. Surely you would not make Sophie move. Family matters should stay private." One woman from Celeste's foundation board wrote, "We all make mistakes under pressure. Grace is what separates family from strangers." I replied to only that one. Grace without accountability is permission. Then I turned off my phone. Harriet called at 5:40. They made an offer. "How much?" $1,085,000. Cash from insurance proceeds and a bridge account. 21-day close. They want the dining room table and the chandelier if included. They also asked whether the old brass height marks inside the pantry door can stay. My breath caught. Philip had marked Julian's height there every birthday until he was 16. Celeste once told me she planned to paint over them. I had begged her not to. The marks are still there. Yes. Then the buyers can have the door, the table, the chandelier, all of it, but the marks stay. They have children, Harriet said. They want to add their own beneath Julian's. For the first time since the Labor Day dinner, the house appeared in my mind without pain. Not as something stolen, as something continuing. "Accept the offer," I said. "We cannot formally accept until the legal process advances or Julian consents." "Then tell Naomi I want the fastest path." Julian did not consent. Celeste declared war. Her lawyer filed a response claiming the family agreement was coercive, outdated, and never intended to be enforced. They argued I had waived my rights by waiting. They claimed I had repeatedly described the house as a gift. They attached birthday cards in which I had written phrases like, "Our home will always be your home." Naomi read the filing aloud in her office. "They are using birthday cards as contract law?" I asked. "They are using emotion because the documents are bad for them." Then she found something else. A text exchange from the night of the dinner, included accidentally in documents Celeste's assistant supplied while responding to a scheduling request. At 6:19 p.m., Celeste had texted Julian. "Your mother is coming. Please make sure she does not join the receiving line. I need donors to understand this is our house and our event." At 6:23, Julian replied, "I'll keep her in the kitchen until dinner." I read the messages in Naomi's conference room. Once, twice, a third time. "He planned it," I said. Naomi did not soften the truth. "Yes." "He did not freeze." "No." "He lied in my hallway." "Yes." I put the pages down very carefully. Something inside me that had remained attached to the old version of my son finally loosened. Not love. Love is stubborn and often inconvenient. But trust. Trust left quietly. Naomi used the messages in negotiations. Within 48 hours, Julian's lawyer changed tone. The accusation of coercion weakened, and the bank, now aware of the dispute and unauthorized borrowing, demanded a refinance plan Julian could not provide. The private buyers remained ready. A settlement conference was scheduled for the third Monday in October. Julian sat across from me at a long table. Celeste sat beside him in a black suit. Naomi sat at my right. Their lawyers spoke for nearly an hour about numbers, deadlines, reputational harm, and alternatives. I watched Celeste. She did not look ashamed. She looked inconvenienced. Finally, the mediator asked whether the parties wanted to make personal statements. Celeste raised her hand before anyone else. "I do," she said. Her lawyer touched her arm, but she continued. "Marjorie has never accepted that Julian built a life separate from her. She gave us the house and then treated it like a permanent invitation into our marriage. Every holiday became a test. Every seating arrangement became an insult. I asked her to use a side entrance for one event because we had a formal arrival process. She responded by trying to destroy our finances." She looked directly at me. "This is not empowerment, it is revenge." The mediator turned to me. "Mrs. Vale?" I folded my hands on the table. "Celeste is right about one thing. This is larger than a door." She leaned back slightly, as if expecting victory. "I transferred the house because Julian said his company would fail without it. I guaranteed the refinance because he said his family needed stability. I ignored the broken deadline, the extra borrowing, and years of being treated as an obligation because I believed love meant making myself convenient." I placed the printed text messages on the table. "But the side entrance was not an accident. You planned to keep me in the kitchen so donors would believe the house belonged entirely to the story you wanted to sell." My son agreed. "Then both of you told a court I might be losing my mind." Celeste's jaw tightened. I continued. "You say I treated the house like an invitation into your marriage. No. I treated my financial liability like proof that I still mattered. That was my mistake. I am correcting it." The mediator asked, "What outcome do you want?" "The sale to proceed. Every secured debt paid. My name removed permanently. No non-disclosure clause preventing me from explaining the truth if asked. And all communication about Sophie must be separate from financial negotiations." Julian spoke for the first time. "Mom, please." I looked at him. He seemed smaller across the table than he had in my hallway. "Did you write that you would keep me in the kitchen?" I asked. His lips parted. "Yes." "Then do not ask me to pretend this happened by accident." The conference lasted 6 more hours. At 4:20, they agreed. The house would be sold to the Norfolk family for $1,085,000. The primary mortgage, equity line, contractor claims, taxes, legal fees and commissions would be paid from closing. My secured interest would be satisfied in full. Julian would receive what remained after all obligations, far less than he expected, but not nothing. They had 28 days to vacate. Celeste left the room without speaking to me. Closing took place on the Thursday before Thanksgiving. I did not attend in person. Naomi signed under a limited power of attorney. Harriet remained at the house with the buyers, who arrived carrying 3 sleeping bags because their children wanted to spend the first night camped in the dining room. At 10:16 a.m., the primary mortgage was paid. At 10:19, the equity line disappeared. At 10:27, the contractor claims were satisfied. At 10:41, my secured interest arrived in my account. At 10:43, for the first time in 12 years, no bank in America could reach me through Hawthorne Avenue. I expected triumph. What I felt was silence. A deep, clean silence. Naomi called shortly before noon. "It is done." "Is Julian clear?" "Yes, after costs he received just under $41,000. "And the buyers?" "They have the keys." "The old key too?" Harriet made sure. I sat beside my window. The cardinal landed on the railing again. "What will you do with your repayment?" Naomi asked. Phillips and my secured interest, after taxes and fees, left me with $168,400. I had decided weeks earlier. "Send $150,000 to Harbour House." Naomi was silent. Harbour House was a transitional housing organization near Richmond's bus station. It served women and children leaving domestic violence, eviction, and emergency shelters. 46 years earlier, before I met Philip, I had spent 5 nights sleeping in a laundry room behind the apartment building where I worked because my first husband had broken my wrist and emptied our bank account. I never told Julian. I told Philip on our 3rd date. He did not look at me with pity. He asked whether I wanted him to sit closer or farther away. Harbour House had recently purchased an abandoned motor lodge. They needed money to convert 12 rooms into small apartments with private bathrooms and secure exterior doors. "How much do they need?" Naomi asked. $147,000 for the doors, locks, windows, and fire system. The rest can furnish the children's rooms. "You have planned this." "I have had time." "Do you want your name on anything?" "No." "Phillips?" I thought about it. "Call the courtyard the Blue Light Garden." Naomi's voice softened. "Because of the fanlight?" "Yes." The wire went out that afternoon. At 3:30, the director of Harbour House called me. Her name was Dr. Lena Brooks. She had a low, steady voice. "Mrs. Vale, I'm looking at a number I keep assuming is a mistake." "It isn't." "Do you understand what this allows us to do?" "Tell me." "We can complete all 12 units before winter. We were preparing to open only 4. 12 doors means 12 families can move directly from emergency shelter into secure housing." I looked at my apartment door. 1 door, plain white paint, a brass chain, a lock I controlled. 12, I said, 12. "Then do it." "May we thank you publicly?" "No." "May we at least invite you when the first families move in?" "Yes." That evening, Julian sent a message. The sale closed. "I know you did not have to leave me anything. Thank you for not taking all of it. I'm sorry for every door I watched you walk around." I read the message several times. Then I wrote back. "Take care of Sophie. Build something that does not require another person to become smaller." He replied only, "I will try." Thanksgiving came 1 week later. For the first time in 38 years, I did not cook for Julian. I joined Naomi and her sister at a small restaurant overlooking the river. We ate turkey, sweet potatoes, and a pecan tart that was not as good as mine. At 2 in the afternoon, Sophie video called me from a rented townhouse. Behind her were half-open boxes and a paper turkey taped crookedly to the wall. "Grandma, look," she said. "We put the stars in my new room." She turned the phone toward the ceiling. The old stars formed an uneven spiral. New stars filled the gaps. "It's beautiful." "Daddy did the high ones." Julian appeared behind her wearing an apron. "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom." "Happy Thanksgiving." For a moment, neither of us knew what else to say. Then Sophie shouted that something was burning, and Julian ran toward the kitchen. The phone tilted, showing carpet and 1 socked foot. I laughed so hard I had to wipe my eyes. The call ended without a serious conversation. It was better that way. 3 days after Christmas, Harbour House invited me to see the renovated motor lodge. The building stood behind a row of sycamore trees on the edge of the city. It had once been a roadside motel with cracked pavement and rusted railings. Now the exterior was painted warm white. Each unit had a dark blue door, a bright porch light, and a small metal number. 1 through 12. Dr. Lena Brooks met me in the courtyard. "We chose blue because of the garden name," she said. At the center, workers had installed a simple arch of blue glass panels. Sunlight passed through them and scattered color across the pavement. For a moment, I could not breathe. Philip was everywhere and nowhere. In the light, in the doors, in the fact that something old had not been preserved exactly, but had been transformed into shelter. The first family moved into Unit 3 that afternoon. A woman named Alana with 2 boys, ages 9 and 5. I did not ask what happened to them. Their story belonged to them. The younger boy carried a red plastic dinosaur. The older one held a trash bag full of folded clothes. Alana stopped in front of the blue door while Dr. Brooks handed her a key. "Is this ours?" the boy asked. "For as long as your mother needs it," Dr. Brooks said. "Can we lock it?" "Yes." From inside? Yes. He looked at his mother. She began to cry. Not loudly. She pressed the key against her lips and closed her eyes. I turned away to give her privacy. On the pavement, blue light covered my shoes. New Year's Eve passed quietly. I made soup, watched an old movie, and fell asleep before midnight. At 8:17 on New Year's morning, my phone rang. Sophie. Grandma, did I wake you? No, sweetheart. I stayed awake until 12:10. That is very impressive. Daddy fell asleep at 11:40. Do not tell him I laughed. She giggled. Then her voice became serious. Daddy told me about the dinner. I sat up straighter. What did he tell you? He said you came with peach dessert and Mommy told you to go around the side and Daddy pretended he didn't see. He said that was cowardly. The word sounded enormous in her small voice. He should not have put adult details on you. I asked. I heard them fighting before the old house got sold. I'm sorry you heard that. Grandma? Yes? If somebody tells me I'm not an actual guest, what do I do? I looked toward my front door. There are answers we give children because they are simple, and there are answers we give because we hope they become a map. You remember that being welcome is not something you have to earn by becoming useful, I said. You do not have to cook, clean, stay quiet, lend money, or make yourself small to deserve respect. If a door is closed to you, you may knock once. After that, you are allowed to walk away. Where do I walk? Toward people who open one. She was silent for a moment. Can I come to your apartment today? Yes. Can I come through the front? I smiled. There is only one entrance, and it belongs to everyone I love. Julian brought her at noon. He carried groceries. Sophie carried a paper bag containing 3 bent glow-in-the-dark stars she said were for Grandma's ceiling. When I opened the door, Julian remained in the hallway. May I come in? He asked. It was the first time in his life he had asked. I looked at him. He had moved into a smaller townhouse, sold his interest in the company, and begun working for another architecture firm. Celeste was living with her mother while they attended counseling. None of that repaired what happened, but it meant he had started carrying his own life. Yes, I said. You may. He stepped through the front door. We ate soup and bread at my little table. Sophie taped stars above the bird feeder. Julian washed the dishes without being asked. We did not discuss the house. We did not discuss the settlement. We spoke about school, weather, a movie Sophie wanted to see, and whether the cardinal outside was the same one who visited every morning. It was not reconciliation, not yet. It was a beginning small enough to be honest. After they left, I opened the notebook I had started on Labor Day weekend. On the first page was the list of things I would no longer carry. On the last page, I wrote, they tried to send me through the side entrance of the life I had financed. I stopped asking to be admitted, removed my name from the foundation, and used what remained to build 12 blue doors that lock from the inside. I read the sentence aloud. Then I added one more line. The front door was never the point. The point was finally understanding that I was allowed to leave. I closed the notebook. Outside, winter sunlight passed through the small blue glass ornament hanging in my window and spread a patch of colour across the floor. It was not the grand fanlight on Hawthorne Avenue. It did not illuminate a staircase or a chandelier or a room full of donors. It illuminated one quiet apartment, one table, one chair, one door I controlled. And for the first time in many years, that was more than enough.